Lavrov says foreign powers are trying to bring down the Syrian government under the pretext of the use of chemical weapons. And Khamenei calls upon Muslim clerics to remain watchful of the foreign plots against Syria. Wounding of several citizens and damaged several public buildings. As he chaired a meeting of the Economic Committee, he asserted that such terrorist explosions showed the failure and bankruptcy of the terrorist groups and their supporters because of the heroic acts of the Syrian Arab Army and its continuous achievements of spreading safety, security and stability through our beloved homeland. The Syrian people are also determined to carry out the political program of President Assad to solve the crisis, according to the Prime Minister. This program remained the only safe outlet to restore construction and comprehensive development. The Prime Minister also asserted that such terrorist acts would only strengthen our determination to continue our efforts of construction and restoration of security and stability. Al-Halaqi expressed appreciation of the role of Economic Committee and its programs, which continue to consolidate the potentials of our national economy and its capacity to face all internal challenges. Dr. Al-Halaqi held a meeting with the Economic Committee immediately after the terrorist explosion, the explosion that took place at a crossroads in Al-Mazda area this morning near the garden of Ibn Rushd. The explosion led to the death of several citizens and the destruction of a number of public and private buildings. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned against using the pretext of chemical weapons to achieve geopolitical purposes by foreign powers and states against Syria. He renewed the steady Russian attitude, which calls for solving the Syrian crisis through dialogue and ending violence. In a press conference in Moscow, Mr. Lavrov said that some foreign powers and states considered everything useful to bring down the government in Syria. However, the pretext of the use of weapons of comprehensive destruction or mass destruction remained dangerous and unacceptable. He asserted that such a political game would hinder the investigation of the events of using chemical weapons near Aleppo on March 19th. As for the claims published by some Lebanese mass media during the recent visit of Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov to Beirut, Mr. Lavrov asserted that Russia's attitude towards the crisis in Syria had never changed, pointing out that his country worked from the beginning to call upon everybody with influence, to ask all parties to stop violence and to start talks without any preconditions. Lavrov asserted that this attitude prevailed in the Geneva communique. The hired counselor of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, Sayyid Ali Khamenei, asserted that the fingers of the enemies are very clear in all events and problems in the region, particularly in Syria, which stand steadfast against their plots. Addressing the conference of the Islamic clerics in Tehran, attended by religious men from various countries, including Syria, he asserted that some Western mass media caused a destructive war in Syria because of Syria's continuous support for resistance and confrontation of Zionism. He warned against the crimes of the West and Zionism, held by the petrodollar states and their rulers who sold themselves to the West. He ignited sectarian war against this region and its people. He called upon the Muslim clerics and political elites to remain vigilant against some plots and to face and foil them. In a related context, the Iranian Assistant Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs, Mr. Hossein Amir Abdullahian, warned against any foreign military intervention in Syria, asserting that the Syrian Arab Army is capable of facing and foiling such interventions. In a TV interview, he renewed Iran's support for solving the crisis in Syria with political methods. He pointed out that Iran continued to offer humanitarian assistance to the Syrian people and to support the political solution and regional initiatives. He denied the claims about Iran's military support to Syria, calling attention to the fact that it was the Syrian army that achieved military successes in the field. Going to our field developments, 2 citizens were killed and several others were wounded when terrorists fired mortar shells against citizen houses in the area of As-Sulaymaniya in Aleppo. This terrorist attack also caused material damage in the houses and vehicles in the place of the attack. Units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces targeted a group of mercenary militias of the so-called al-Nusra Front, which belongs to the terrorist organization of al-Qaeda, in 2 villages in the Zakia countryside. Large numbers of terrorists, including non-Syrian snipers, were killed, including the Yemeni Omar al-Saleh, also known as Abu Ubaidah, and other Chechen snipers. Another unit of our armed forces attacked the hideouts of mercenary terrorists in several villages, killing and wounding large numbers of them and destroying several vehicles carrying weapons and ammunition. Units of our armed forces also destroyed rocket launchers that were used by the terrorists of the so-called al-Nusra Front. In Deir ez-Zor, units of the Syrian military carried out some qualitative operations targeting the terrorist hideouts in the old airport and the As-Sina'a neighborhoods, killing a large number of them. Also, Syrian army units destroyed some terrorist hideouts, including weapons and ammunition, in Nerab, Saraqib, Ma'arat Musrin, Binnish, Taftanaz, and Sarmin in Idlib countryside. Going to Homs countryside, where our armed forces and security forces restored safety and security to the town of Kmam in Al-Aqsir area. Other units targeted terrorist groups in the villages of Al-Salumiyya, Al-Rahmaniyya, and the nearby farms in Al-Aqsir. These areas joined the liberated places after the defeat of the armed terrorist groups. Assistant Director of the Canadian Security and Intelligence, Michelle Pearce, asserted that dozens of Canadians are fighting alongside the armed terrorist groups in Syria. Pearce warned that those who are fighting alongside the terrorist groups can, after they return to Canada, apply their expertise to carry out their extremist activities in Canada. It's worth mentioning that the report issued by the International Centre for Radical Studies at the Royal Academy in London has shown that since 2011, between 2,000 and 5,500 foreign fighters have joined the terrorists in Syria, including about 590 Europeans from Britain, Netherlands, France, Belgium, Denmark, and Germany. Former chief of the Israeli Mossad, Meir Dagan, said that Israel has to do its best in order to topple the government in Syria, because this would have strategic benefit for Israel. The Israeli Haaretz newspaper quoted Dagan as saying during the annual conference of the Israeli Jerusalem Post newspaper in New York that Israel will achieve strategic benefit from the fall of the government in Syria, including the split between anti-Israeli powers like Iran and Hezbollah, a thing that would weaken this axis. Recently, military intelligence chief Amos Yedlin has said that anyone who does not understand the fall of the regime in Syria as a pure Israeli interest is unable to read correctly the situation in the region. At least 26 Iraqis were killed and 67 others were wounded in terrorist explosion of 3 booby-trapped cars to the south of Baghdad today. The Iraqi police said 2 vehicles exploded near a popular market in the city of Al-Amara to the south, killing 9 people and wounding 40 others. A third car exploded in another market in Ad-Diwaniyah, killing 2 people and wounding 27 others. With this, we come to the end of our news for today. For more details, you can visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Stay with us, the latest in economy and finance in our economic news, but after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Real Estate Bank declared that 3 new ATMs have been put into service in Damascus, located at the Palace of Justice, Dar al-Assad for Culture and Art, and the Higher Education Ministry. The branches of the Real Estate Bank reached 24 branches in addition to 300 ATMs distributed in all the Syrian governorates. The American spot crude fell, trimming the biggest weekly increase since June, as the U.S. economy grew less than expected in the first quarter of this year. The Brent crude fell for a second day as investors speculated that the slower growth in China will curb the fuel demand in the world's biggest oil consumer. U.S. stock futures climbed, with the Standard & Poor's 500 index heading for its sixth straight month of gains, while most European shares gained as Italy formed a new government and optimism grew that the central banks may decide to maintain the economic stimulus in their meetings this week. Gold advanced, trimming the worst monthly loss since December 2011 as demand for physical metal countered outflows, whereas gold for June delivery was up as much as 1.3%. The US dollar weakened for a second day against the euro before a report that economists said they will show the US personal spending recession last month, adding to speculations that the US growth is faltering. The US dollar index dropped for a third day on speculations that the US economy may keep slowing after a report last week which showed the economy expanded less in the first quarter than analysts forecasted. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. This was our economic news for today. Goodbye.